Why did the ancient Queen of Heaven voluntarily walk into hell just to be murdered? You might think you know about descent myths. You've heard of Orpheus looking back, or Persephone eating the pomegranate. But the original story, the Sumerian one, it is infinitely darker, bloodier, and more disturbing than anything the Greeks ever came up with. We are talking about the very first great story ever written down. And it doesn't start with a hero saving someone. It starts with Inanna, the goddess of love and war, deciding that being the queen of the universe wasn't enough. She wanted to conquer the one place that didn't belong to her, the great below, the land of no return. But here is the thing about Sumerian mythology that schools usually gloss over. These gods weren't benevolent. They were messy, ambitious, and violent. Inanna wasn't going down there to make friends. She was staging a hostile takeover against her own sister, Ereshkigal, the queen of the dead. So how do you invade a kingdom where the only residents are dust and ghosts? You dress for the occasion. Inanna didn't put on armor, she put on her power. In Sumerian, they called them the me. These were physical objects that held divine authority. She put on her turban of command. She put on her lapis lazuli necklace. She grabbed her gold ring, her breastplate, her measuring rod. She draped herself in the royal robe of heaven. She was literally wearing her authority. But Inanna wasn't stupid. She knew Ereshkigal hated her. So before she left, she told her servant Ninshubur, "If I'm not back in 3 days, raise the alarm. Go to the high gods. Don't let me die down there." That was the backup plan. And with that, she walked up to the gates of the underworld and knocked. Now imagine the scene. You are at the gates of Ganzir. It's dark. It smells like old earth and silence. The gatekeeper Neti asks who is there. Inanna shouts, "I am Inanna, Queen of Heaven, on my way to the east." She lies. She says she's just passing through to attend a funeral. Neti goes to tell Ereshkigal. When Ereshkigal heard her sister was at the gate, she didn't smile. The ancient texts say her face turned dark as a storm. She slapped her thigh in anger. She knew exactly what Inanna was doing. So Ereshkigal gave the order. Let her in, but treat her according to the ancient laws. This is where the trap springs. This is the part of the story that plays out like a nightmare. There were 7 gates leading down to the throne room of hell. 7 layers of defense. At the first gate, Neti stopped Inanna. He said, "Queen Inanna, take off your crown. It is the custom of the underworld." Inanna asked why. Neti just said, "Quiet, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. Do not question them." So she took off her crown. She gave up her authority over the sky. She walked through. At the second gate, Neti stopped her again. "Take off your earrings." She argued, but he took them. Now, she had lost her ability to hear magic. At the third gate, the lapis lazuli necklace, her beauty, gone. At the fourth gate, the breastplate, her emotional protection, gone. Can you feel the tension rising? At every single step, she is being stripped, not just of her clothes, but of her identity. At the fifth gate, the gold ring, her alliances, gone. At the sixth gate, the measuring rod, her ability to judge others, gone. And finally, at the seventh gate, Neti demanded the royal robe, her last shred of dignity, her last protection. Inanna walked into her sister's throne room naked, bowed low, completely vulnerable. This wasn't a battle, it was an execution. Ereshkigal was sitting on her throne, surrounded by the Anunnaki judges of the dead. Inanna tried to take the throne. She actually tried to sit in her sister's seat, but the judges stopped her. Then, Ereshkigal did something terrifying. The tablets say she fastened the eye of death upon her sister. She spoke a word of wrath. There was no fight. There was no epic duel. Ereshkigal simply struck her down. In an instant, the Queen of Heaven, the most powerful goddess in the pantheon, was turned into a corpse. Specifically, the text says she was turned into a side of rotting meat. And then, Ereshkigal hung her on a hook on the wall, like a piece of beef in a butcher shop.
That is the image I want you to sit with.
The goddess of love, green and rotting, hanging on a rusty nail in the dark. That is where ambition got her. 3 days passed. In the world above, everything stopped. No animals bred, no crops grew. The world was dying because the force of life was hanging on a hook in hell. Remember the backup plan? Ninshubur, the loyal servant, started panicking. She went to the great god Enlil. He said, "Not my problem. She wanted the underworld. She got the underworld." She went to the moon god Nana. He said, "She's crazy. Let her stay there." Finally, she went to Enki, the god of wisdom. Enki realized that if Inanna stayed dead, the whole world would end. But even he couldn't just storm the gates of death. He had to be clever. So, Enki scraped some dirt from under his fingernails. Gross, I know. But from that dirt, he created 2 strange, sexless creatures called the Kurgara and the Galatur. He told them, "Sneak into hell like flies. Ereshkigal is in pain because she's mourning, birthing. Sympathize with her, echo her pain. When she offers you a gift, ask for the piece of meat hanging on the hook." It sounds insane, but it worked. The creatures slipped through the gates unnoticed. They found Ereshkigal groaning in misery. When she cried, "Oh, my inside," they said, "Oh, your inside." They mirrored her suffering. Ereshkigal was so grateful for a little empathy that she offered them anything. They pointed to the rotting meat on the wall. She tried to offer them gold, rivers, anything else. They refused. They took the corpse of Inanna. They sprinkled it with the water of life and the food of life given to them by Enki. And Inanna gasped. The meat turned back into flesh. She stood up. She was alive. She turned to leave. She was ready to sprint out of there. But you don't just walk out of the underworld. Just as she reached the exit, the Gala demons blocked her path. These aren't the cute demons from cartoons. These were enforcers who know no food, know no drink, accept no gifts. They told her the rule. An eye for an eye, a head for a head. If you leave, someone else must take your place. This is the darkest part of the story. Inanna ascends back to the surface, but she is surrounded by a swarm of demons waiting to grab her substitute. First, they come across Ninshubur, her loyal servant. Ninshubur throws herself in the dust, weeping for Inanna's return. The demons say, "Let's take her." Inanna says, "No, she saved my life. She mourned for me. You cannot have her." Next, they find her son. He is dressed in rags, crying his eyes out because he thought his mother was dead. The demons say, "Him then?" Inanna says, "No, he is my family. He mourned for me." Then they arrive at Inanna's great apple tree in Uruk. And there, sitting on Inanna's own throne, wearing her clothes, is her husband, Dumuzi, the shepherd king. Was he crying? No. Was he wearing rags? No. He was dressed in fine linen. He was feasting. He was having a great time. He thought his powerful, intimidating wife was gone forever, and he was finally the big boss. He wasn't mourning her death. He was celebrating his promotion. Inanna looked at him. The text says, she looked at him with the same eye of death her sister had used on her. She looked at the demons and screamed, "Take him!" No hesitation, no mercy. She pointed at her own husband and fed him to the wolves to save her own skin. Dumuzi tried to run. He begged the sun god to turn him into a snake, a gazelle, anything to escape. But the Gala demons dragged him down to the underworld to take Inanna's place on the hook. Eventually, Dumuzi's sister felt bad and offered to take his place for half the year. So Dumuzi spends 6 months in hell, winter, when the land dies, and 6 months above, spring, when life returns. That is how the Sumerians explained the seasons. But the real lesson here isn't about agriculture, it's about the cost of power. Inanna conquered death, yes, but to do it, she had to be humiliated, killed, and then she had to sacrifice the person who was supposed to love her most. It makes you wonder about the nature of these ancient relationships. We romanticize mythology, but the Sumerians were brutally realistic. So, here is the question I want to leave you with today.
If you disappeared for 3 days and came back with an army of demons demanding a
Substitute, would your partner be found weeping in the dust, or would they be sitting on your throne, drinking your wine? Let me know in the comments below.